on after that long break. So we're just redoing this, and hopefully you can hear now. So we're back in the hearing. Apologize for the trouble. All right, I apologize for that.
No problem. Are we ready to go, Mr. Bundy?
Yes.
All right. So, David, you want to read us back onto the record?
Yep, stand by.
Recording in progress.
All right, the time is 1:34 p.m. Back on the record.
Mr. Bundy, we've used this term as a fleet business. What is a fleet business?
It's a repair and maintenance business for commercial trucks.
Okay. Mr. Bundy, you posted a video on February 22nd, 2025 called Bankruptcy Denied, ! Do you recall that?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you truthful in that video?
Yes.
100% truthful?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to play for you to the share screen. I've just got a question. I know most of it was stating your opinion regarding the underlying case. I don't want to rehash that, but I've got a couple questions about some statements in there. So can you see the share screen, Mr. Bundy?
No.
How about now? Is that working?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. And I'm going to do my best to be quiet. What I'm trying to do is let you hear what you said so I can follow up with some questions on it. So let's give this a shot, Mr. Bundy, and see if you can hear it clearly. I'm going to retry because I had it too low, I think.
I think, they're just trying to get as much information as they can, or as they can use it against us in whatever way they possibly can. That's all it's about. So when it comes to everything, they've already taken, my home. In 2024, they took 4 income revenues from me. Of course, they took my commercial properties and all the rental incomes. They took my shop and took all the income I had from there. And then I started another fleet maintenance business here. And they took that, or at least they seized all the bank accounts so that I couldn't benefit from that business. And I made it very...
So, did you hear that right, Mr. Bundy?
I think so.
Yeah, so my question relates to a couple statements in there. You stated, and I'm looking at the rough transcript that YouTube generates. That's why I wanted to make sure you had a chance to hear what you said, in case the transcript was not right. But you stated, I started another fleet business here, and they took that, or at least they seized all the bank accounts so I couldn't benefit from that business. That's what you said, correct?
If that's what I said in the transaction, then yes.
So what was the other fleet business that you started here in Utah?
That was under my father-in-law's name, and that was the account that you seized from him.
So what was the name of that business?
I think it was the legal name. I mean, I had it so short a time. It's like ANL. I actually don't know exactly. I could look it up, but I don't know exactly what the legal name was.
Okay. And what was the status of that business at the time you shut it down?
Well, you shut it down. I didn't shut it down. I mean, you made it so that I couldn't, even do transactions in it.
So what was the status of the business at the time that it shut down, Mr. Buddy?
I don't understand your question. What do you mean by this status?
Was it operating?
Of course it was operating before I shut it down.
Okay, and what type of revenue was it generating?
I could look it up, but I don't know exactly right off the bat.
Can you give me an estimate?
No.
Do you have records relating to that, the financial records relating to that business?
I've got some financial records, but they're very short period of time. And I don't have access to them
Why do you not have access to them?
because you seized the bank accounts and they would not give us even the statements without approval from Holland and Hart.
So is this another situation where when I'm asking for financial statements, all you have are checking? You don't have any financial records for your business other than checking account statements?
Ask that question again, I guess.
Sure, I'm just trying to understand. I'd ask if you had any financial records of this fleet business that you started, and then you responded about bank records. So here's my question. Are you telling me that the only financial records that you have regarding this business are checking account and savings account statements?
Yeah, the same as the others. I mean, they were very brief. When I first started it, I was basically just doing it all cash. And then I picked up a couple of customers, if you will, that, paid me checks. And that was difficult because I was not able to deposit those checks. And so then my father-in-law opened up a business account so that I could deposit those checks and, legitimately pay myself. I started and I was just doing work, kind of side work. I mean, and this just really shows your wickedness here because
Mr. Bundy, my against you, the process to determine whether somebody who's a debtor like you has assets is this process. And
I don't care who you are. You do not have a right.
Mr. Bundy,
You do not know. You'll hear me out or we'll end this. You
No,
do
Mr.
not
Bundy,
have a
Mr.
right
Bundy,
to
we are
take
not
my
doing
ability to provide for my family. You do not have a right to steal everything from me so I cannot even put food on the table and clothes on my children's back.
Mr. Bundy,
That is wickedness, Mr. Stidham, and that's what you are doing.
Here's the problem.
And now you have put my family in that situation, and to survive, I had to start doing side work for cash. And then because my customers wanted to pay me with a check, my father-in-law incorporated and provided a way for me to do that. As soon as you found out about that, you seized those assets as well. This all you know, you want it on record, so you're going to get it on record, which is just another terrible theft. So then I had to maneuver and try to make a living another way.
Mr. Bundy, I know that
Oh, you don't want the speech, huh? Because the speech condemns you. Speech condemns you.
This is not another Mr. Bundy speech YouTube. It's an examination.
This is the reality of what you have done to my family.
Mr. Bundy.
This is the reality. You don't like it? It makes you uncomfortable because of what you are doing to people and you think it's legally and okay. But it is theft And it is a terrible, terrible thing that you're willing to do to families. Now I'm done, so let's move on.
Mr. Bundy, stop posing for your people and answer the question.
I'm not posing.
Please. Yes,
I am not. I am telling you the reality of
Mr.
what you
Bundy.
have done to my family.
Mr. Bundy.
I gave you an opportunity to move on. Now you want to continue to debate?
Mr. Bundy.
I am not posing for anybody. I am telling you the reality of my situation that you have caused because of your wickedness, and you the one getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to do this.
Mr. Bundy.
You grifter. That's what you are.
Mr. Bundy. Mr. Bundy. A jury heard all about this. This is not the time to litigate.
You lied to that jury.
Mr. Bundy.
You presented lie after lie to that jury. If you would like to go into that, I could go into that.
Time for speeches.
I'll ask you one question.
Mr. Bundy.
Did your client lie about baby Cyrus's condition when he was admitted into the hospital?
Mr. Bundy, you're telling falsehoods.
Did your clients lie to the jury about baby Cyrus's condition when he was admitted into the hospital? Would you like
me respond? Clearly, Mr. Bundy, you're treating this like theater for the people that you've invited on YouTube. It's a process, and we need to get answers to your questions.
Do you really believe
it's pretty
that?
clear, Mr. Bundy, don't talk over me. I gave you the courtesy.
Yeah, I'm not talking. Okay, I'll let you.
You give me the courtesy. Clearly, it appears to me that you took a little break, you scanned the YouTube comments, and now you're coming out trying to give a speech. Please, get back in the process. Get back in the process. I've got no interest in Ammon Bundy theater. I'm ready to get questions, truthful questions, I hope to gosh, from you.
Okay, now I'm going to respond to your ridiculous accusation.
Mr. Bundy.
I will respond and then we'll be over, okay? I did not look at the comments on YouTube.
Mr. Bundy.
You asked me a question about a very sensitive time in my life when you continue to steal from my family when we were barely making it from week to week. And I went out on my own, didn't get on government welfare or anything else. I went out on my own and found another way to make a living for my family. And then you stole that again from me. And you've done it 4 times. And you want to act like I'm just doing this for theater? This is the survival of my family. No, don't Mr. Bundy me.
Mr. Bundy.
I am going to, you don't talk over me. You are a thief that has stole multiple incomes from me and put my family in terrible situations. And then you want it, when I articulate that, you want to act like it's theater. I am not rambling. I'm being very clear. I'm being very clear.
I think we need to until he settles down. I
Oh.
really don't see what else we can do.
All right, the time is 1:47 p.m. off the record.
We'll be back in 1 minute, Mr. Bundy. Just settle down a little bit.
Recording stopped.
You ready to go back on the record, Mr. Bundy?
Are you ready to go back on record? Are you ready to stop accusing me of surviving?
Mr. Bundy, answer the questions.
I did answer the question. You didn't like the answer.
You can give your speeches on YouTube all you want, but
Mr. Stidham, I am going to end this conversation completely if you do not stop falsely accusing me of what actually happened. You lied. I did answer the questions. You did not like the answer.
Mr. Bundy,
I answered the question.
Answer the questions.
I did answer the question.
Okay. Are you settled down now?
I'm not. Are you settled down?
Okay, Mr. Bundy. I'll hope that you respond.
Stop acting like a psychopath, like you haven't caused this.
Sure, Mr. Bundy.
Sure,
All right.
sure, Mr. Stidham.
All right. I think we're ready. I think he's settled down. Let's go back on the record.
He's such a jerk. You're such a jerk.
Recording in progress.
All right, the time is 1:48 p.m. back on the record.
Mr. Bundy, did you make accurate financial disclosures when you were applying for a public defender?
I don't even know what you're talking about, what period of time
Well,
you're talking about.
you've made some disclosures in order to get a public defender, correct? And then you withdrew that. Did you were those disclosures accurate?
I don't know, that was several years ago. I don't even recall the transactions or what my reports were. If I did it, I would have done it intentionally, to be honest.
Okay, Mr. Bundy, I've got another question, but I'll probably just go to the transcript relating to the video post you did for your followers on the 22nd. You said that at the time of the lawsuit, you had a net worth of, I want to make sure I've got this correct. You said you had a net worth of
5 or 6 or maybe
about-
7 million.
I think you said maybe 7 million.
I said 5 or 6 or maybe 7 million, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And I just want to understand what those components are. And now I know that could you just kind of break down how you get there so we can understand what those assets were? And I'm comfortable at a general level. I know we've got Abish, which included some real property, but could you just help me get to the components that get to $7 million that you had at the time of the lawsuit?
Just Abbas shares, my home, just different properties.
What were what were your shares in Abish valued at around that time? What was your guess? What was your estimate?
I don't know. I just broke it down. Total wealth, the total portfolio of everything is 5 to 6, maybe $7 million.
And I want to make sure I've got the major components of that wealth so we can make sure that we covered it. You mentioned the home on Harvest Lane, correct?
I did. That's obviously part of it.
And I believe you stated in various postings to your followers that you estimated that it had a value of about $1.8 million. Is that accurate?
Do you think it's well, I guess I'll just object. I just don't think it's appropriate for you to spend this entire deposition just trying to. No, hear me out. Hear me out. I'm just.
Some statements you made.
No, I know, but you're spending this entire time not in the bankruptcy realm. You're just doing it to set yourself up for either protection against litigation in the future over the shares, or so that you can litigate against me as the owner of Abish Husbandi. I mean, it's obviously what you're doing. And I wish you would move on from this. The bankruptcy court is not to help you collect or litigate in another court. It's just not for that.
Mr. Bundy, I'll disagree with you on that. Are you ready to move on?
Are you ready to honor my
You
objection?
You estimated that your home.
I'm objecting to this line of questioning.
Was about $1.8 million in value. Is that correct?
I'm objecting to this line of questioning. I mean,
Why?
let's
Let
get.
the record reflect. Let the record reflect that you stated your home was worth about $1.8 million, and you sold it to a friend and business manager for about $250,000. Correct?
I object to this line of questioning.
That was your choice to reduce your wealth there. Correct?
I object to this line of questioning.
Well, did you? Well, fair enough. You object to it, but do you dispute it?
I object to this line of questioning.
Mr. Bundy, and this relates to this continuing issue of Abish Bundy. With your estimate of $6 or $7 million, and we subtract the 1.8, that gets us down to about $4 or $5 million in Abish Bundy. Is that accurate?
I object to this line of questioning.
Mr. Bundy, what did you estimate your value of Abish Bundy to be in 2023?
I object to this line of questioning.
What do you estimate that your value in ownership of Abish Bundy was at the time that you filed your bankruptcy disclosure? And I can get the form up for you. It fluctuated a bit. You want to get the disclosures out so we can understand those?
You mean the schedules, the bankruptcy
Yeah,
schedules?
excuse me, the schedules that you made, the representations you made to the bankruptcy court.
Sure.
Okay, give me a second.
I mean, they're there. The shares are there. There's $20,000 worth of shares there. Or 20,000 shares, excuse me, 20,000 shares. And
Well, just while I'm pulling it up now, Mr. Bundy, so we can get like a real-time estimate. What do you estimate your value, the value of what you contend you own relating to assets of Abish's Bundy to be? When we've talked about, you've got some cash, you've got a truck, and you've got
I don't know what the value would be.
some domain.
I don't know what the value would be.
Have you undertaken any effort to ascertain the current value
No.
of? Just let me, Mr. Bundy. Remember, I need to get the full question out. So
Okay.
As you sit here today, Mr. Bundy, can you estimate? Will you tell me, excuse me, what your estimate is of the full value of your ownership in Abish's Bundy, given the assets that you currently control in the name of Abish's Bundy?
No, I could not give you that value.
Okay. Just so I'm making sure we've talked about things, but we've talked, there's been stops and starts. I just want to try to sum up questions so we can move on. As I understand it, you dispute issues around Abish's Bundy. Fair enough. But as I understand your testimony, as we sit here today, you personally control and or possess approximately $200,000 in cash, a truck, and some intellectual property and a domain name in the name of Abish's Bundy. Is that correct?
I've already answered that question.
I just want to make sure, Mr. Bundy, that I understand correctly. Is that correct? And I'm going on testimony you've already provided. So I'd just like you to confirm if that understanding is correct, which sums up your testimony.
I think that is somewhat of an accurate summary. I mean,
Okay. Is there anything that you would tweak to make it more accurate from that statement?
no. I mean,
Okay. Thanks.
I don't know exactly how accurate you are, but you generalized it, you summarized it, and I
Was that a
generally agree to it.
fair enough?
That'll be some good litigation in the future, huh? That you can bill St. Luke's for.
Well, we'll go to the schedules eventually, and do you contend the schedules that you provided to the bankruptcy court were accurate at the time you made them?
Yes, I contend that.
Okay. All right. Do you personally have physical possession of any Abish's Bundy shares?
Do I personally?
I mean, we've seen the share certificate that you sent. To. Let me clarify my question, make it hopefully a little clearer. I've seen where you sent to Global Trading, that share certificate, and then they sent it back. My question is this: I'm talking about, physical paper, Mr. Bundy. Do you personally possess or control physical shares in Abish's Bundy?
Are you talking about like the certificates?
Yeah. Yes.
So just to clarify,
Yeah.
do I have the certificates from the previous company known as Abish Husbandi?
Yes.
I believe I do in record, but they are a long ways away from my, getting them. That's a problem. I put my records in the front of the truck, and anyway, I've explained that
That's what I'm
situation.
trying to circle back about, because you talked about the fact that you thought that you had a ledger relating to Abish's Bundy, correct?
Yeah, and I believe that is accessible.
Okay. All right. Are there any other physical documents relating to Abish's Bundy that have not yet been provided as part of this bankruptcy? We've talked about, do you have a minute book, for example?
A what?
A minute book?
Yes, I do. It's not very detailed, but I do have a minute book.
Okay. And do you have records of, first, did Abish's Bundy hold any shareholder meetings?
Yes, we did, unofficially.
unofficially? Do you
Yeah.
have any records of the shareholder meetings, whether they were unofficial or not?
They would be very brief if they, so I would say actually no, I don't think there's any like minutes or details of the shareholders meetings.
So did you conduct when's the last time you conducted a shareholders meeting of Amish's Bundy?
I don't remember the date.
Has it been within the last year?
Well, like I said, it's unofficially, so I've spoken with the shareholders, several times.
Right, but is there anything that you would consider to be, to meet the requirement of an annual shareholder meeting that's occurred in the last 4 years?
As far as like minutes or dates or whatever, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
No.
Vote on resolutions, address any issues, any kind of meetings like that in the last 4 years?
No.
And Mr. Bundy, I'm just going to ask a question that you pled the fifth to before, just to make sure I've got it in the record, a response. The question is, can you explain to me what Mr. Jones provided in exchange for his shares in Amish's Bundy?
Let me go to my records real quick because I want to be accurate.
And while you're doing that, Mr. Bundy, if you're going to read off the pleading, I understand that, but could you give me could you add the time frame for the work and the time frame from when Mr. Jones received shares?
Yeah, if I have those details, I'll tell you. And this is just all about litigation he's going to try to do outside the bankruptcy.
Mr. Bundy, who are you talking to?
David. Okay, let's see here. Kind of missed my place here. Okay, I'm getting back here. Shares. Okay, so Mr. Jones was compensated $3,000 to $4,000 a month, and was given 250,000 Abish shares for his valuable skill as a programmer. And the period of time would have been, I think, between 2020 and 2022, 23, right around there. I mean, that's a very loose period of time, but it was ongoing work that he was doing.
And you said he was doing programming work?
That's correct.
Okay. What was he programming for Amish's Bundy, given the nature of its business?
He was programming a campaign software.
Okay. Was that used for the Ammon Bundy campaign?
It was.
Okay. And so, so I understand that Mr. Jones performed services for the Ammon Bundy campaign, and you paid him in shares of Amish's Bundy.
No, that's not accurate at all.
Well, did the software that he programmed get used for any other purpose other than your campaign for governor?
We intend to use it. It possibly can be used.
If you run for office again?
No.
Okay.
It was in,
So,
I mean.
Can you explain to me how, was Mr. Jones performing any work for Amish's Bundy?
Yeah, all of it was from Abbish's Bundy.
So programming software for the Bundy campaign was work for Abish's Bundy?
So those were your words. Please do
No,
not put
I'm
words
trying,
in my
Mr.
mouth.
Bundy, that's a question.
So when
Are
you,
you saying that?
when you, when
Just
you're,
let me get the complete question out, Mr. Bundy, so you have a complete question to answer to. So if I understand your prior testimony, Mr. Jones provided programming services for political software that was used for the Ammon Bundy campaign and was paid in Abish's Bundy shares. Is that correct?
no.
Okay. Can you clarify what I'm misunderstanding?
So I'm going to clarify, and hopefully you won't interrupt. But it's going to be a little long, so I could clarify it. Because this is not the first software that I have built.
Sure. Just please, no speeches about the underlying case.
I
That's all
am, I am not. I'm answering a question
Go ahead,
so that
Mr.
you
Bundy.
can understand it.
You heard-
Please do
you heard
not
my
insult
request.
me
You heard
every
my
time I
request.
make it. Try to respond. Don't insult me every time I try to respond.
I didn't insult you, Mr. Bundy. You know I didn't. Go ahead.
By you saying I'm making a speech is so insulting.
I said, please do not make a speech. Go ahead.
Okay, this is not the first software that I have built. For example, and this is relative to the answer, I built a fleet maintenance software, as you are well of. And I built it in my shop and solely tested it in my shop, did all of the changes and all of the real life application and development in my shop. But the shop did not own the software. And the same with this software. We began to develop a campaign software. It was done under the name of Abish. It was paid for by Abish primarily, and it was also partially paid for by Abish shares. The intent was to develop this software to the point where other candidates could use it. And Nate Jones was compensated for his valuable skills and hard work for years in developing this software.
Is that, do you still have possession or control on behalf of Abish's Bundy of that software?
I have some logins and stuff, but I really don't have control of it.
Is that software and the related IP the property of Abish's Bundy?
Well, Abbas Hispandi is the one who paid for it, but there is no Abbas Hispandi at this point.
Well, Mr. Bundy, at the time that in exchange for the shares that were provided to Mr. Jones, did Abish's Bundy gain ownership of the software and related IP?
No.
Okay. Was there ever a written agreement regarding the work Mr. Jones was doing?
The problem is you use the word gain. Abbas Hispandi, in my understanding, always owned it.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So let me ask it again.
That'll be more that you can steal.
I'm sorry, sir. You want to speak up?
I said that will be more. That'll be some more that you can steal.
So, Mr. Bundy, if I understand correctly, Abish's Bundy owns IP and software that Mr. Jones prepared, created in exchange for shares that he was given. Is that correct?
In my understanding, there is no Abbas Hispandi at this.
I'm talking about
hearing.
at the time, excuse me, sir. Just to clarify, I was using just to make things easier for you, I was using the time frame during which Mr. Jones was receiving shares. Okay, so what's the answer?
Yes.
Um, here's a question previously that you pled the fifth to in your prior examination. Has Abish distributed any payments at any point in time to shareholders?
I did answer this question before, so, but I understand you want it on record, and so let me. Please ask the question one more time to
Sure.
clarify it.
And I'm changing up a little bit, hopefully to make it the question a little cleaner. Has Abish ever distributed any payments or any distributions to any shareholders other than yourself?
Yes.
Who did it make payments to or distributions to?
Mr. Jones.
Okay. And we're talking about that was the shares in exchange for the software work we were just talking about. Is that correct?
Not just the shares, but
He got distributions from Abish Bundy?
he was paid.
Oh, understood. He was, and I guess I was just trying to make clear, I'm not talking about vendors getting paid, but I think I appreciate your answer. So here's another question I just want to make sure we tick off that was hanging from the last time when you pled the fifth. Have there been any distributions to Global Investments or to your sons from Abish Bundy?
Well, both my boys worked for me, so the answer is yes.
And I'm not, to be clear, Mr. Bundy, I'm not talking about whether they did work and you paid them in shares. I'm talking about as a shareholder that they're getting a distribution or a distribution from the corporation.
So there has never been any distribution to any shareholders, including myself.
Okay. Is it your contention all the money that you've received from Abish Bundy has been for your work as a 1099 employee of Abish?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Bundy, how were the rental payments received by Abish Bundy distributed among the shareholders of Abish Bundy?
I would not say that they were distributed by any shareholders in the way that you're implying.
Mr. Bundy, if you could scoot up closer to the microphone, thank you.
No problem.
You're completely in the dark, Mr. Bundy, when you lean back.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you hear my answer?
I did though. I'm not sure. Let me try to ask the question again. I just want to make sure I'm getting an answer to this specific question. Have any shareholders received any portion of the rental payments that have been made to Abish Bundy?
Well, as any business, the income goes into an account or some type of funds, and then expenses are paid out of that. That's the way I was paid, and that's the way my boys were paid, and anybody else who did work for Abish.
So let me go back related to that. Mr. Bundy, earlier you testified that you did not file any tax returns on behalf of Abish because Abish always lost money. How did you go about determining that Abish lost money in any year period?
So I don't believe that that's, well, I know that's not
Well, if
what I said.
if I misstated, let me just start with the question again, if I misunderstood your prior answer. I believe you said that you did not file any tax returns for Abish because you felt that you did not need to, because Abish never made a profit. Did I misunderstand that?
I don't believe you are casting that statement correctly.
Okay. Putting aside whether or not you paid tax payments, has Abish's Bundy made a profit in any year of its operation?
No.
How do you
I,
determine?
well,
that
I do,
Abish-
I do not believe so, no.
Okay. Why? How is it that you would determine whether or not Abish made a profit in any year?
Well, Abish was purchasing properties, you know, in the amount of, you know, significant amounts. And, you know, the balance of that would be, I believe, in the negative. So, you know, for example, the warehouse, the other properties, you know, these were large amounts of expenses. And the income coming off of the rentals was much smaller than the amount of, you know, profit. So hopefully that makes sense. I know I didn't articulate that very well.
Well, maybe we can get there, Mr. Bundy. Are you saying that when you just look at the checking account assigned to Abish and Bundy, there was less at the end of the year than there was coming in? That's what I'm trying to understand.
So I am very much objecting again. It's just the same thing. This is not to benefit the bankruptcy estate, to finalize the bankruptcy proceeding. You are using this deposition to benefit future litigation that you obviously intend on doing in another court. And I object to it. Like, these are not questions that are appropriate. They're not questions that are appropriate for this bankruptcy proceeding.
Mr. Bundy, I disagree. And if you're not going to answer, we'll have to take it up with the judge. But I need to ask the questions to establish a record of what you are refusing to respond to.
I mean, you have this opportunity to
Mr.
ask
Bundy,
me
that's how it goes.
questions that are going to benefit, you know, you in the bankruptcy, and you just are not asking those questions. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate.
Mr. Bundy, what ownership, if any, do you have in Bundy Industries?
I don't even know what Bundy Industries is.
What interest, if any, do you have in the Bundy Steakhouse in St. George?
Zero.
Have you provided any money or services to the Bundy Steakhouse?
I've eaten there twice.
Do you receive any payments or revenue of any kind from the Bundy Steakhouse?
No.
Okay. Do you know who owns and operates the Bundy Steakhouse?
I don't know exactly how it's organized. No.
Well, is it operated in part by your brother Arden
Yes.
and his wife?
I don't know about his wife.
Mr. Bundy, what is your relationship to Bundy Motors?
I am a 1099 employee of Bundy Motors.
Okay.
Subcontract.
And how do you get paid by Bundy Motors?
I get paid $1,000 cash a week. He pays for fuel and some food costs, like just lunches and dinners and so forth, and then some uniform expenses.
Okay. And what services do you provide for Bundy Motors?
I do most of the managing, some of the technical development of it, and most of the day-to-day stuff.
Have you been promised any ownership interest in Bundy Motors?
No.
Do you anticipate obtaining any ownership interest in Bundy Motors?
I mean, I hope so down the line sometime, but at this point, no.
Who to your knowledge, owns Bundy Motors?
My brother Ryan.
Your brother Ryan? Does Ryan work in the Bundy Motors business?
He does a little bit, but very little.
So, am I understanding correctly that Ryan Bundy is the owner of Bundy Motors, but you get paid as a 1099 employee and you manage and run the operation?
Yeah, I think that's mostly accurate. I mean, he makes all the financial decisions. He, makes the major decisions, and I do the manager level, day-to-day stuff.
How long have you worked? Let me back up. We've used that term a couple of times, 1099 employee. Can you tell me what you understand? Or strike that. Can you tell me what you're meaning to convey when you use that phrase, a 1099 employee?
I think, another term for that is a subcontractor.
Okay. You consider yourself a subcontractor?
I do.
Okay. Any are you employed either as a subcontractor or employee? Strike that. Have you been employed as a subcontractor or employee in any business other than Bundy Motors since you relocated to the St. George area?
Yes.
And what has that work been, sir?
I have subcontracted with many people doing fleet maintenance work, electrical work, various different skills.
Okay. And has that all been as a 1099 employee or subcontractor?
Yeah, all of it has been.
Okay. So no time as a W-2 employee, is that fair?
I haven't been a W-2 employee for, 30 years. I mean, give or take. Don't put me in jail. Don't put me in jail over that. But
I understand that to be an estimate, Mr. Bundy. Here's a question that relates to something you claimed the fifth on your prior agreement, your prior testimony. I understand from the testimony from the Bransons that you had Mrs. Branson purchase some stock holdings in her name, even though you funded and controlled those stock assets in order to conceal those funds from St. Luke's. Is that true?
no,
What is inaccurate about that statement?
that I did it in order to conceal them from St. Luke's. That was my sole purpose.
And I didn't say sole purpose, sir. So let me just break it up from the intent reason, okay? So, did you have Mrs. Branson purchase some stock holdings in her name, even though you funded and controlled those stock assets?
Yes,
And were those stock assets a portion of were those stock assets transferred to you?
I believe the answer is yes, if I understand your question correctly.
Well, let me try to make it clear. The stock that had been purchased for your benefit in Mrs. Branson's name, was that stock transferred to you in your name?
No.
How did you, have you obtained from Mrs. Branson the value of the stocks that you had her purchase in your name?
So the
Mr.
stock,
Bundy, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're completely in the dark.
oh, sorry, I apologize. It's just the lighting's terrible in here. At least it's really nice lighting, but not for Zoom. I'll put it that way. So the answer is when I bought the stocks in Mrs. Branson's name, they were valued at, I think, the 130,000 that I testified of. This was a long-term investment, and without authorization, after they would not return the almost 500,000 or a little over $500,000 from me to me during that time when our relationship was hindered because they would not return those funds. They, without my knowing or consent, sold those shares on their own at significantly less from what I bought them, and they returned that amount to me, claiming that all they were worth is $35,000 or $35,000.
How much money did you give Mrs. Branson to purchase the stocks in her, for your benefit in her name?
Like for her benefit?
No, I might have misspoke. I was just trying to use the language that you agreed to before. How much money did you give Mrs. Branson to purchase stocks for your benefit, but to purchase those stocks in her name?
I believe that it was I testified earlier of it. I believe it was 130,000.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I was understanding the numbers and the transactions. And then, so you gave the Bransons $130,000 to buy this stock in Mrs. Branson's name, and then they sold it and they returned to you how much?
If I remember correctly, it was 34,000.
Was that 34,000 a part of the $487,000 payment into? No, it was not. I see
No,
you shaking
sorry.
your head. Okay.
I was waiting for you to finish your question.
No, I appreciate you waving me off if I was misunderstanding. Where did that $35,000 from the stock go?
I mean, this was in 2022, I think. And I'm just not sure how I handled that, to be honest with you. I would have to investigate more.
Would it have gone through any of your bank accounts?
Well, I believe it was a check, so yes, it was not cash.
Okay. Do you know what you used those funds for?
I don't. I don't remember exactly what I used those funds for.
Mr. Bundy,
I would suspect my campaign, but I just don't know that for sure.
Okay. Mr. Bundy, do you and or your wife use any foreign bank accounts?
No.
Do you or your wife have any money, whether it's in your name or someone else's name,
No.
in foreign bank accounts?
No.
Mr. Bundy, do you have, and I'm going through some of those Fifth Amendment questions from last time. Mr. Bundy, do you currently have any bank holdings in foreign countries?
No.
Mr. Bundy, do you have any assets of any kind held in foreign countries?
No.
Do you have any assets of any kind held in cryptocurrency?
No.
Mr. Bundy, have you or your wife created any trusts and funded those trusts within the last 3 years?
No.
Have you or your wife created any trusts in order to avoid collection by St. Luke's of its judgments?
No.
Mr. Bundy, do you and or your wife own any bonds?
No,
Mr. Bundy, do you and or your wife own any stocks?
no,
Does Abish's Bundy own any stocks?
no.
Mr. Bundy, you valued a gun collection at about $3,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
How many guns does that include?
I think it was 6. I just spoke with the trustees about this. It was 6.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Have you communicated all of the information and details regarding those guns to the trustee?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Bundy, do you own a Sentra, a Nissan Sentra?
No.
Did you own a Nissan Sentra at any point in the last 2 years?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What happened to that Sentra?
I traded it.
Can you just give me a ballpark about when that occurred?
Yeah, would you do that? Ballpark would have been right around the time I moved to Utah.
Okay. And I know that you've given a schedule of vehicles to the trustee. My recollection is that includes 3 trucks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you own any other vehicles?
No.
Okay. And
Well,
I know that-
there's a little. I believe it was a 2016 Ford Focus. Don't 100% on the year. It was a Ford Focus. It had like 60 something thousand miles on it, and I had purchased all of the parts and supplies to pretty much fully repair it, and it's all with the vehicle. And I think I purchased it for like right around, I want to say like $4,600 or something like that, and then probably another, $1,200-$1,300 in parts. And I did not declare that. I felt that it wasn't in my possession, and they could or whatever. But if they want to slap my hand for that, I don't know. But that's the status on it.
Okay. Mr. Bundy, I'll tell you that I don't believe we're going to get done by 3 o'clock, but here's what I'm intending to do. Okay?
Well, so let me just, before you present something, my son came and I asked him to go pick up my younger children in school. So I am not dragging this on another day. I guess you have 7 hours by law, and if you can take those 7 hours, you can take them.
I appreciate you accommodating that, Mr. Bundy. And, like I said, hopefully we can, hopefully we'll be more efficient here on the back end. So thank you for that. I'd like to take just a 5-minute break to get kind of the next round of documents kind of sorted out so we can run through them more quickly. So if it's all right with you, Mr. Bundy, let's go off the record for 5 minutes.
That's fine.
All right.
Okay. See, the time is 2:34 p.m. off the record.
Recording stopped.
Looks like everybody got back on.
Just a bunch of people.
Turn that AC down just a little bit. Or something. A little warm here.
Mr. Bundy, you ready to go on the record?
Yes.
Okay, stand by.
Recording in progress.
All right, the time is 2:41 p.m. Back on the record.
Mr. Bundy, I'm gonna try to share the screen here. Can you see the share screen, sir?
Yes.
Okay, and I'd like to introduce as Exhibit 4 some screenshots that were taken off the People's Rights Network website. I'm sorry, Mr. Bundy, did you say something?
No.
Oh, yes, sir. So, some screenshots that were taken off the People's Rights website relating to Donna Custos. So do you see the document, sir?
I see the screen share, yes.
The screen share, thank you. And does this look to be a true and accurate copy of what was on the People's Rights website at or around 2022?
I would not know. I would not know. I mean, it looks
Well-
it looks accurate, but I wouldn't be able to tell you for sure.
Were you aware that Donna Custos was identified on the People's Rights website as a site where donations could be made?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So taking a look at the screenshot, you see there where it indicates Donna Custos, P.O. Box 307, Emmett, Idaho. You see that, sir?
Yes.
Was that your P.O. Box?
No.
Whose P.O. Box was that?
I think it was Donos Costos. I'm not exactly sure how, or that's a familiar P.O. box that I'm familiar with, but I'm not sure actually who owned it. But it wasn't me personally, I don't believe.
Okay. And do you know who did own it if it wasn't you?
I think it was Donos Costos, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. And you were the sole shareholder in Donna Custos, correct?
Yes,
And you incorporated the entity?
I did, yep.
Okay. And you had complete control over Donna Custos during its existence?
I did.
Okay. And you were aware that Donna Custos was identified on the PRN websites as an entity that would receive donations for PRN, correct?
That's correct.
And then also the PRN website solicited credit card donations too, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm scrolling down the exhibit 4 to the second page, and it says at the bottom, please note that your bank statement will show a donation to the Freedom Tabernacle. Do you see that?
Correct.
Can you explain to me why the credit card donations to PRN would receive a statement saying donation to Freedom Tabernacle?
Because that, I believe, was where the credit card transactions were going to. Freedom Tabernacle checking account.
And did the donations received, credit card donations received that went through Freedom Tabernacle, did you receive those funds?
What do you mean by I received those funds?
Did you, Ammon Bundy, receive funds that had been donated by credit card to PRN?
No.
Where did those funds go?
Those funds went to pay the expenses for the People's Rights Network.
Okay. What expenses were those?
Software management, software development, software, then any advertising, any, expenses for meetings, text messaging, email messaging. There's a various different expenses that this network would incur, and the donations would go to pay those expenses.
Were you in charge of the finances for People's Rights Network?
Not solely. I had a influence in it.
Well, who besides you did?
There's several people. There's a whole bunch of people that had influence of how it was run, where the finances went, and I was certainly one of them. I did have good influence, but I was not unilaterally in control of how the donations were spent to pay for the People's Rights Network expenses.
Where are the financial records, to your knowledge, relating to monies received by PRN?
Some of them are available online still, and I am actually not sure which one how far we can go back, what is available.
Okay. Did you ever own any? Did you ever own an account in the name of Donna Custos?
When you say I own, what do you mean by that?
I misspoke. Thank you for asking for the clarification. Did you ever open and or control a bank account in the name of Donna Custos?
Yes.
Okay. And is that bank account continue to be operating?
You seized that bank account.
Okay. Any other bank accounts other than the one that was garnished relating to Donna Custos?
I'm not sure if I had one in Wells Fargo like I did with Abish or not. I can't recall, to be honest with you, if I had one that early or not. If I did, it was a short period of time, and I think most of the transactions were done in the Clarity.
So you had a Clarity account for Donna Custos,
Yeah, I believe that's where.
and that was the only account that you can recall for Donna Custos with certainty. Is that fair?
That's correct.
So would the money from the credit card payments received by the Freedom Tabernacle get deposited into your Donna Custos account?
I don't believe so. No, I don't believe so. Because between Donos Costos and Freedom Tabernacle, they paid the expenses for the People's Rights Network, but I think they were done directly.
Okay, who would know?
Well, I could get that information, but I object to that.
Understanding that you object to get it, I mean, tell me what the nature of the information is that you could get, or the documents that you could get.
Well, you have I believe you have the Donos Costos bank account statements. So that would cover that part. And Freedom Tabernacle, I mean, I was never an owner or a signer or anything on that account.
Mr. Bundy, I'm going to mark as Exhibit 5 to your deposition. Let me screen share here. I'll represent to you that we have what we have is a spreadsheet provided by the credit card processor for Freedom Man, reflecting donations made to PRN through Freedom Man. Have you ever did PRN obtain from Freedom Man this information regarding who is donating and when and how amount and in what amount?
No.
Okay. Did you or Abish Asbandi or Donna Custos or any other entity related to you obtain any of the funds in any way that were donated to the Freedom Tabernacle related to PRN?
Are you talking about personally or any entity or any of that? Any of the above?
Any entity. And I just wanted to cast a broad net and then we can get more specific.
No, I can't 100% be sure that there were not some that was transferred to Donos Costos, although I do not believe so. But there was never any personal funds transferred to me, and I do not believe any funds were transferred to any entity that I had interest in.
I'm going to share another screen with you. All right, Mr. Bundy, I put up a document that we're going to mark as Exhibit 6. And it's a report from the Southern Poverty Law Center regarding extremist organizations receiving large Ethereum cryptocurrency donations. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Have you seen this document before?
No.
There's an analysis reflected in this document of tracing at least some cryptocurrency donations, and it indicates that there was a $93,000 transfer of cryptocurrency into a cryptocurrency wallet held by and controlled by you and or PRN. Do you see that?
I do. I remember seeing this, not in this form. I remember laughing about it because I had no idea what they're talking about.
Go ahead, sir.
It would have been nice to have that kind of donation.
So well, People's Rights Network did have a cryptocurrency wallet, did it not?
It did.
Okay. And who controlled the cryptocurrency wallet?
I would say that there was, several people that had influence and had control over it.
Who did that include?
Well, I was one of them. Nate Jones was one of them, and a handful of other people.
Who were the handful of other people?
I would have to look at actually see what permissions they had before I could answer that correctly.
What do you mean by permissions? Permissions they had to access the account?
Yeah, to access and view the account.
Okay, did you set up the account?
I was involved in setting it up, but I did not. I kind of wasn't the brains behind it, if you will.
Okay, and did you also set up an account for yourself at Coinbase?
For myself, I don't believe I can accurately answer that question.
What is the information or knowledge that you're missing to answer that?
Well, I don't know if I had a Coinbase account in my name or not.
Did you have control or any level of control over any Coinbase accounts?
Yeah. But I believe that it was basically associated with the People's Rights Network, Coinbase. So I may be incorrect on that. I'm pretty sure. I know that. Anyway, yes.
So
I am uncertain what the status is. I haven't tried in years to access it. And are you talking about the People's Rights Network Coinbase account? Is
Well,
that-
it's
Or-
unclear to me, sir.
I mean, technically it wasn't a People's Rights Network Coinbase account, but we were,
Was that? Go ahead, sir. I didn't
so
interrupt.
maybe,
Go ahead.
I don't know exactly how that was set up. It was many years ago, and I know we had options for people to donate through cryptocurrency, through a Coinbase account. Um, I can tell you that, to my knowledge, uh, we never had a $93,000 transaction or whatever they're saying go through our Coinbase account that I'm aware of. So
Well, here's the portion that relates to PRN. It indicates in January 22, PM received some donations in January of 2022 that worth over $66,000. Do you see that?
I mean, I don't see where you're at. I
Right?
don't know.
Is this help, sir?
Okay. Yeah, this, as far as I'm aware, is just completely inaccurate.
Okay.
Completely inaccurate.
Who would know for sure whether or not you have? Who would know for sure whether or not you have any cryptocurrency accounts that contain funds?
It would take us logging in and seeing.
Do you have a log in information for the cryptocurrency account that was used by?
I have
PRN?
not tried to log in to that for years.
And my only question, sir, is understanding your testimony, you haven't tried. Do you still have the login information?
I do not know whether I do or not. I certainly give it a go, but I do not know if I have any of that information or not. So, give me one moment.
Let's just go off the record for a quick moment, guys, while Mr. Bundy stepped away.
Okay, the time is 2:59 PM off the record.
Recording stopped.
Mr. Bundy, we went off the record for a second. I'm going to pull
All
up
right.
another document, and when I do, if you're ready, we can go back on.
I'm
the
ready.
record.
I'm
There's-
ready.
there's-
I apologize. I just needed a second.
No apology needed. I told you if we need to take a break, it's not an endurance contest. The document's kind of snagging on me, so give me a second.
If I'm calculating right, taking out the breaks that we've had, my 7 hours is about 4 o'clock.
Yeah, and Mr. Bundy, just so you know, part of the videographer's duties, he keeps a precise count, and you can ask him for the time anytime you'd like. I asked him a little while ago, but I think it was somewhere around 4 hours right now.
Yeah,
So,
we're at 4 hours, 47 minutes, and 18 seconds on the record.
okay. So Mr. Bundy, that's how it goes. Feel free to ask him for a check-in anytime
How
you'd
do we
like.
start at 9 o'clock, take a couple breaks, and end up only 4 hours at 3?
Mr. Bundy, you can track with the video. These guys are never wrong. It's what the job they do. So, you ready to go back on the record, Mr. Bundy?
Yeah.
Stand by.
Recording in progress.
All right, the time is 3:02 p.m. Back on the record.
Mr. Bundy, let's see, I'm sorry. I forgot to share the screen. Mr. Bundy, this is, I'll represent to you that what we're going to mark as, are we at Exhibit 7, Brooke?
6, I believe.
6?
No, I believe it is 7, Eric. Hold
Oh,
on
is
one
it?
second.
Okay. Mr. Bundy, what I'm going to mark it as Exhibit.
Sorry, it is 7. Yes.
Marking as Exhibit 7, Mr. Bundy, these are documents that were produced by Mr. Brant Parker. And I'm going to be introducing those as an exhibit. This one is a document of about 20 pages. First, Mr. Bundy, for some background, who is Mr. Brant Parker, again, just for the record?
He's a CPA.
And when did you retain Mr. Parker?
I think it was this last summer, 2024.
Is it fair to say that you retained Mr. Parker after you'd filed your bankruptcy?
No.
Okay. Well, I think he's got some records in there, and that regarding the hiring, maybe that'll be more specific. That was my recollection, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, you are wrong on
so,
that.
So, Mr. Bundy, what was Mr. Parker charged to do by you?
Just go through my books, figure out different tax obligations and forms.
Why were you at that point in time having Mr. Parker look at preparing taxes for the past 5 years?
I was under the understanding that in order to file bankruptcy, I had to be current on my taxes, and because of my believing that I needed to file bankruptcy, I retained him to prepare those.
And I see it. I mean, I'm going to characterize some documents. We can look at them specifically if that's not in line with your understanding. But I see a number of tax returns, individual or joint tax returns that were prepared by Mr. Parker for a number of years. But at least to my recollection, I don't see any that were signed. I know we've addressed this kind of question in the past, but just to confirm it in light of what Mr. Parker has prepared. Have you filed any of the tax returns that Mr. Parker prepared drafts of?
I've already answered that question.
So the answer is no?
I've already answered that question.
I'll take it that the answer is no. If you want to correct me, please do.
I
So-
don't take it.
So, Mr. Bundy,
You do not get to answer for me. My answer stands.
well, let's take a look again. Excuse me, I lost it. I want to get back to what we marked as Exhibit 7. Exhibit 7 is looks to be a draft tax return prepared by Mr. Parker for 2018. Do you see that?
Yes.
Did you review Exhibit 7 when it was prepared by Mr. Parker?
No.
Have you ever reviewed this draft tax return that is Exhibit 7 before?
No.
So maybe you've answered that already, but let me get a couple other questions in here. Well, I assume you know pretty much how a 1040 form works, correct? Let's take a look up here you see where I'm at on the first page of Exhibit 7, Mr. Bundy, where it's got wages, salaries, and tips, and he's got calculated here $61,875.
Are you asking a question?
Yeah, I'm asking if you see it. I was just trying to orient you.
Yes, I
And
see
then my
it.
question is, do you see where it says 61,875?
Yes.
Do you know how Mr. Parker arrived at that number?
No.
Did you consult with him in any way in arriving at that number?
I mean, I gave him all the bank statements and information, but no, I did not tell him how to do his job.
Fair enough. So you mentioned you gave him the bank statements and you said and information. What are you referring to as the and information that you provided to Mr. Parker?
Oh, there was from time to time he would ask me a question here and there. It was pretty brief, and it wasn't very often.
Okay, and what were the questions about?
I don't remember any specific question.
Generally,
were-
what were they about?
There were financial questions.
Okay. Did he prepare drafts of tax returns for Abish's Bundy?
I do not believe he did.
So I'm scooting back up here. So I'm at what is page 3 of Exhibit 7, and it looks like oops, excuse me, I'm at the wrong spot, Mr. Bundy. I'm at page 1 of 20 at the bottom where it says amount you owe, and this draft reflects $2,085. Do you see that?
Yes.
Did you ever discuss that, at least calculated obligation with Mr. Parker?
No, not in specific detail, no.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to share the screen again, Mr. Bundy. Didn't work. So I'd like to mark this as Exhibit 8 to your deposition, Mr. Bundy. Do you see that? That there's a a draft individual tax return for 2023. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And he has calculated for 2023 that you had income of $12,773. See that here where I'm highlighting on line 9 of page 1 of Exhibit 8?
I see that, yes.
Do you know how he arrived at that number?
I do not know how he arrived at that number.
Do you think that you had more income in 2003 than $12,000?
Again, I don't know how
Excuse
he...
me, Mr. Bundy, I need to back up. I misspoke. Do you believe that you had more income in 2023 than $12,000?
I don't know how he came up with that number. It'd be pretty hard to, but I mean, I'm sure he's good at his profession, and so I'm not sure how he calculated that. Is that just raw income? Is that what the raw income?
I was hoping you could provide some clarity, but if you weren't involved in that, maybe that's to the extent it turns out to be significant, something we have to take up with Mr. Parker.
Yeah, I don't know how he did that, to be honest with you. So.
Okay. Did you pay Mr. Parker?
Yes.
All right. I just need to. I want to go through a couple more documents in his file to see if I understand what we've got here. So I'm going to share sorry, Mr. Bundy, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this document. I've got to work with Mr. Bundy. I'm going to share the screen. Mr. Bundy, I'd like to make this Exhibit 9 to your deposition, and that looks to be a 82-page document that was produced by Mr. Parker, and this relates to, and I'm looking on the 6th page of the exhibit, looks to be a draft income tax return for 2019. Do you see that?
Yes. In this tax preparation, Mr. Parker has calculated that you had taxable income in 2019 of $94,434. I see that.
Okay, and he refers to about $80,000 in taxable interest, no wages or salary. Did you receive any wages for work in 2019?
I've already answered that question earlier.
No, you haven't, Mr. Bundy. Mr. Bundy, please let's move along. If it's not controversial, could you just please answer the question so we've got a coherent narrative here?
I'm
Did
not
you-
gonna answer it according
did you
to you, how
receive-
you want me to. I'm gonna answer it accurately. I already answered that question.
Mr. Bundy?
That would be an, if you look over,
do
it
you
says
recall-
W-2
do you
right there.
recall whether you received wages either as a 1099 or a W-2 employee in 2019?
Well, I don't believe that line, I don't know for sure, but it doesn't look like that line is including 1099 stuff. So attached form W-2. So the answer would be for that line, no.
Okay, I understand how you're clarifying that. I appreciate that. So, did you consult with Mr. Parker regarding the calculation of 294,000 after standard deduction, taxable income of $294,000 in 2019?
No, this is the first time I've seen this.
Then if we look at Schedule 2 in the draft that he's prepared, excuse me, Schedule interest in Schedule B, interest in ordinary dividends for 2019 that he prepared. He's listed here, list name of payer if any interest is from seller financed mortgage and the buyer used the property as a personal residence. See the instructions and list this below. So there's a reference here to interest relating to full bay of $76,000. Do you know what that relates to?
Yeah, that was the first software that he developed, the fleet maintenance software company.
Okay. And is that the acquisition that we talked about that eventually, that was intended to be for about $700,000?
No,
That was the fleet.
that was a valet fleet service, yeah.
Okay. So Full Bay was the software that you had an interest in, is that correct, sir?
That's correct.
Do you still have an interest in Full Bay?
No,
Have you received any interest or payments of any kind for Full Bay in the last year?
no. Well, let me correct that. The answer is no. The only thing that I benefit from is, I guess what is called a client, where I can have access to the software up to 100 logins. And that expires 10 years after I sold it.
Do you receive any do you generate any revenue for that?
No. I did use it for my fleet maintenance company when I moved here. So there was benefit, but no revenue generated.
Okay. Then he reflects interest from Abish of about $3,859. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you know how he calculated that?
I'm not exactly sure how he calculated that, no.
Do you have any understanding as to what type of interest you receive from Abish that would be around $3,859?
The only thing I could think of is loan interest.
And let me understand that. So was Abish Bundy paying Ammon Bundy interest on a loan?
No, and I didn't think that's what you were asking. I guess the answer would be, I don't know exactly what that is. And the answer to your recent question is no, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, and let me state it again. Did Abish Bundy ever have a loan agreement with you as an individual?
No. Not a written one, only an unofficial one that I've talked about already in this proceeding.
The one that, the testimony that you said that related to the Arizona property?
That's correct.
So take a look at what is page 19 of, I believe we're on exhibit 9. Do you see that, Mr. Bundy?
I see, yes.
And there's a reference to gross profit and contract price. And then if you look up here, when it says description of the property, it's calling sale of the fleet. Do you see that?
Yes.
And does that relate to the transaction that you've testified about that you said was initially for about $700,000?
I believe so.
And that occurred in 2018?
That's correct.
All right. Documents are not cooperating with me. All right, Mr. Bundy, take a look at the draft for your income tax return for 2021. I'd like to make this document exhibit 10 to your deposition. See that, sir?
Yes.
See the share screen? And the exhibit 10 is 86-page document that was produced by Mr. Parker. So if we look at Mr. Parker's draft, he's calculated that you had taxable income in 2021 of $327,832. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe that that's not accurate?
I have no idea how you come to that conclusion.
Okay. And do you see that he's calculated as some tax relating to that? And I'm on page 7 of exhibit 10, and he's calculated about $30,000 worth of tax for 2021. Is that correct? To the federal government.
What do you mean by correct? That he has calculated that?
No, I'm sorry, sir. Let me ask the question again. If we look at page 7 of 86 on exhibit 10, line 37, Mr. Parker has calculated that you owe $30,466. Is that fair?
I see that number there, yeah. I don't know how he comes to
That was just my question. Is that what he's calculated? Okay. He's also made a calculation, if we look at exhibit 14 of 86 relating to profit and loss for business for the Ammon Bundy for governor. Do you see that, sir?
Yes.
Did you give him direction on that?
What do you mean by direction on that?
Did you work with him to develop the profit or loss Schedule C relating to Ammon Bundy for governor?
I would have given him the bank statements and I don't know, probably all the transactions from the Idaho Secretary of State.
Okay. Also, if you look at Exhibit 10 on page page 57 of 87, strike that. On page 56 through 58, he's calculated an Idaho tax return. Is that correct?
I see Idaho Tax Commission on the top of the form.
Okay. All right, Mr. Bundy, just one more of these to get into the record. I'm sharing screen on what I'd like to mark as Exhibit 11, and that's a draft from Mr. Parker for a 2022 tax return, federal tax return. Do you see that?
Yes.
And he's calculating that you only received $16,000 in income in 2022. Does that sound accurate?
Like I said, I'm sure he used the same formula as all the other years.
So how did you survive on $16,000 worth of income in 2002?
Well, probably from the residual from the previous years. I mean, that's kind of the way business goes. But I mean, I don't know that answer exactly, but I would guess that he calculated the incomes correctly, and I had funds from previous years when I had really good years. But I don't know. I'm just guessing because I don't know how he came to that conclusion.
Okay, well, maybe we can get to just a couple more documents in this file, and maybe we can move on.
That was what year again was that?
Exhibit 11, sir, was 2022.
And so yeah, I was campaigning that year. I didn't make any money, or very little.
Okay, so Mr. Bundy, let me share a screen for another document. This is a document, Exhibit 12 is a document from Mr. Parker's file responding to an inquiry from the U.S. Trustee's Office. And Phil, I've got a couple questions about the letter, Mr. Bundy. And so if you'd like to take a quick look, feel free to read the entire document, but my question is going to be mainly about those paragraphs, with those two middle paragraphs that are highlighted.
Go ahead.
So first question, if I look at this sentence here in the middle of paragraph 2, Mr. Parker writes, he proceeded to create tax returns for valet fleet services for 2018 and 2019 and returns for 2018 through 2023. Is that what you directed him to do?
I believe so. I mean, I know further up here it says we were talking about Avis Bondi and Bundy Farms. I think that was original intent, but then he was going to just tackle the valet fleet service and my personal first, and then if we needed to do the other stuff, we would.
Okay. So if we look also at later down on Exhibit 12, it looks to be that there's some text reflecting you and he being in contact in May 29th of May 29th. Would that have been 2024?
Yes.
Does this look to be true and correct copies of text messages between yourself and Mr. Parker?
I really have no idea.
Well, take a look at it, and if you need me to scroll more slowly, I'm happy to do so. Again, these have been produced by Mr. Parker. Do you have any reason to believe that these are not text messages, that these are something other than true and correct copies of text messages between you and Mr. Parker?
I have no reason to see why they wouldn't be, but I don't know. I could read through each one of them and verify them if you would like.
So I've tried to scroll through some of these text messages just so you can get a flavor for it. Any same kind of question, Mr. Bundy, based on what you've had a chance to review here on the share screen. Do these look to be, to best of your knowledge, at least true and correct copies of email communications?
Again, I'd have to go through each one of them to verify them.
Okay. Did you see anything that gave you reason to believe that they were something other than true and correct?
I wasn't able to look at them close enough.
Okay. All right. So I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something there on the end. All right, Mr. Bundy, let's take a look at the next grouping of documents that I'd like to go through with you. I'm sorry, Mr. Bundy. I'm having some real trouble with my Adobe on this end. All right, let's see if this works, Mr. Bundy. Mr. Bundy, I'd like to direct your attention to what I'm intending to mark as Exhibit 13. And Exhibit 13 is a document from Bob Fauché at Holland and Hart to a Joseph Scott Malone. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Who is Joseph Scott Malone?
He is a tenant of Avis Bondi, and I've known him for quite a while, since I lived in Emmett.
Was Mr. Malone assisting you in getting additional tenants at around this August 2024 timeframe for the Emmett properties?
Yes.
And isn't it true that you had a for rent sign up at the warehouse property that directed folks to call Mr. Malone?
I believe he set something up or advertised that, yes.
And was Mr. Malone being compensated by you to generate income for you?
It was basically, he was leasing, or at least the company that he worked for, whatever agreement he has with them. We were trading, I guess. I gave him kind of a more of a wholesale rate for rental by managing that property or helping me manage that property.
Okay. And was the entity that Mr. Malone was working for, was that Nutrigem?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And do you recall what Nutrigem was paying in rent at this wholesale rate at or around summer of 2024?
I don't know exactly. I think it was like 4,200 or something like that.
When did Nutrigem stop paying rent?
It's been several months ago.
Okay, but they continued to pay rent. Did Nutrigem continue to pay rent after you'd filed bankruptcy?
Yes.
Did you use some portion of the Nutrigem rent to pay yourself as a 1099 employee of Abish?
Yes.
How much were you paying yourself as a 1099 employee of Abish from rent that was being received by Nutrigem?
Like I said, it was all cash. My records were not very good because I wasn't running it through a bank account, and so I can't answer that accurately. I was continuing to pay the expenses of Abish, and then I was paying myself as a 1099.
So is it fair to say after what, if any expenses you were paying for Abish, whatever was left, after what, if anything, you paid for expenses to Abish, you were paying to yourself as a 1099 employee for Abish's Bundy?
I don't know if it's fair to say like the balance, no, but I was taking a 1099 payment, and I was also paying all the expenses to keep up the property and the utilities that were Avish's obligation, and the other things that needed to be done, so that I was meeting Avish's, contracts, lease agreements, and obligations.
And when did you last receive a 1099 payment from Abish?
Oh, I would say I'm not exactly sure, but I think like October.
Well, and this is just, I appreciate your testimony, but my understanding is Nutrigem did not vacate the warehouse until sometime around January of 2025. So does that jog your memory as to whether you continued to receive payments from Nutrigem up to the end of the year in 2024?
Well, I think you're combining the two together again, because there is, receiving payment from the tenants, and there's actually taking a 1099 income, if you will, and I believe that I'm accurate by saying that I hadn't taken a 1099 any income from Abish since October. But I did receive funds and use those funds for paying the bills of Abish and different things. And I don't have an accurate account of that. I don't even know how I would get an accurate account of that, but I believe it was October. I just don't think I think by November I hadn't taken anything from Abish, if I remember correctly. I think October was the last month.
Okay. And I apologize if I've asked this before, right? But I don't think I have. Is there any way for us to trace through documentation how much you were paying yourself as a 1099 employee of Abish up through October?
Like up to October?
Yeah, whatever you said the last payment was. Is there a way for you to calculate how much you were paying yourself as a 1099 employee up to the date of the last payment you gave yourself as a 1099 employee?
I mean, I would have to do like a rough declaration because I did not have bank accounts. Those bank accounts were all seized, and so it was all cash. Everything was cash.
Were there any tenants other than Nutrigem that were paying you in cash?
Yes.
Who are those tenants?
They are ones that Scott found. So I would have to look. I can't remember their name. They were a church group.
Yeah, Mr. Bundy, let me. I've got a potential list. Let me see if I can access that real quickly to maybe help you get through this portion. There was Nutrigem, and I understand though that Emmett Dorr did not. Did Emmett Dorr pay you in cash?
No.
Okay. So, were you getting paid in cash by Greg Gotzola, a metal fabricator?
No. And I wasn't getting paid anything.
Was Ammon Bundy getting paid by Greg Gotzola, a metal fabricator?
Getting paid, yes, but not in cash.
Okay. Getting paid in check?
Yes.
How much was Mr. Gotzola paying?
Again, I don't have the lease agreement in front of me, so I'm just going to give a rough around $1,500.
And how long did I understand Mr. Gotzola didn't move out until January of this year. Did Mr. Gotzola continue to pay rent up through January?
No.
When did Mr. Gotzola stop paying rent?
I don't know exactly. I mean, I have several of his checks here, but I don't.
You've got canceled checks. Have those been produced to the trustee or anyone?
No. These are business transactions. I did not file bankruptcy for Babish Hespondai. I filed bankruptcy for Ammon Bundy.
But fair enough. So, did Thousand Hills Foundation, was that a tenant that paid you rent?
That sounds familiar as the other cash tenant.
And this other cash tenant, Thousand Hills, how much were they paying you in cash for rent?
I think it was $600 a month.
And did they pay up through January of 2025?
No,
When did they stop paying?
I believe in November or December.
And do you have records that would reflect those cash payments from Thousand Hills, Nutrigem, and the metal fabricator?
No. Oh, the metal fabricator. You talking about Greg?
Yeah, strike that. I understand the metal fabricator paid in checks,
Yes,
correct?
correct.
You have those checks, correct?
I believe I have all those checks. Yes.
And do you have records that would reflect the cash payments from Thousand Hills and Nutrigem?
I do not.
Is there any way for us to, form a record of your receipt of those payments?
I mean, they may have records. I don't. They were cash payments. You know, I know Nutrigem signed a lease agreement. I don't believe the other entity signed a lease agreement. I prepared one for them, but they didn't sign it. And there was basically just cash payments, and they were occupying the building. And of course, I was not in Idaho, and so I never actually had any direct communication with them.
Understand. Mr. Bundy, let's take just a 5-minute break, and I can hopefully get some of these next documents lined up so we can be more efficient when we go through the next questions.
I actually object to taking a break.
Well, Mr. Bundy, we're going to take a break for 5 minutes. If you want to quarrel about whether we go 5 minutes off or not, but it's going to be more efficient for me to get the documents squared away.
I'm just wondering, that has to be how we, have been here for
Mr.
almost
Bundy,
8 hours. Please
Mr.
listen to
Bundy,
me.
I will agree that we will stop at 6:55 rather than 7. I'll give you this 5 minutes as a running clock, okay? But we're going to go off camera.
Okay, the time is 3:48 p.m. off the record.
Recording stopped.
That's how it's been extended so long, because he's went off the record.
Mr. Bundy, you can be heard, just so you know.
That's fine. I have a question though. We could ask the question on the record, or must be gone.
Mr. Bundy, I heard you. Do you have a question? I'm just sorting through some documents.
So after reviewing the law, it
With
appeared. it appears that it's, my understanding is that it's 7 hours max, not 7 hours on record.
You misunderstand, Mr. Bundy. If you want to take that with the court, I know David is or is not a lawyer, but he's just wrong about whatever he told you.
David hasn't said a word.
Okay.
So it's your interpretation.
It's not my interpretation. It's every lawyer who works in federal court.
So your interpretation is that it's 7 hours on the record.
Yes, it is, sir.
So is this not correct? According to federal law, a deposition is typically limited to a single day of 7 hours, meaning the maximum duration of the deposition is 7 hours in one day, unless otherwise stipulated by the court or agreed upon by parties involved.
And Mr. Bundy, if you look at the case law interpretation, the 7 hours that you just read is interpreted as time on the record. And I know if you want to get into that whole thing, like when you were saying the original complaint only was for $50,000 when it said damages in excess of $50,000, you know, that's fine, but it really would be helpful if you consulted an attorney.
Well, the only reason I'm even here in the first place is just to be done with it. But I think you're just probably going to drag me in court again anyway, so I might as well just be done at this point.
If you wanna, you know, Mr. Bundy, if you wanna stop it, you know, I don't think have that much more to go, at least for this session, you know, that's up to you.
For this session. Well, I'm pretty sure you're going to try to drag this on through multiple depositions, even though that the bankruptcy is already, the discharge has already been ruled upon. They're not going to let me go bankrupt. So I think we just end here. I believe I've met the 7 hour obligation. It started at 9. It's now 4, almost 4.
Mr. Bundy,
That's
if you
8
wanna
hours
do this-
duration of time.
Mr. Bundy, do you want to do this if you're going to just stop us now, if you want to go, are you going to go on the record and just walk away from the deposition?
We're gonna, I
David,
believe,
David, how much, just a second, Mr. Bundy, how much time do we actually have left?
We're at 5 hours, 33 minutes, 15 seconds.
So there's basically an hour and a half left minus the 5 minutes I told you I'd give you.
the problem
So
is,
it's up to
you're
you.
the problem is you're just gonna drag me in these over and over
Mr.
and
Bundy,
over and
I
over.
really am not interested in this, spending more time on this.
I really don't
I
care
have-
what you're interested in,
Mr.
Mr.
Bundy,
Stidham.
please,
I don't
just
really
please.
really care at all.
David, let's
What-
get Brooke here and get back on the record.
So I'm gonna end the deposition.
Okay, let's go back on. 1 second.
Recording.
He's just gonna drag me in it over and over and over. There's never gonna be any end. So anyway, there's the end of it. I was 8 hours in the deposition, as you witnessed, or nearly 8 hours. There was several, times where he went off record. I recognize that, but my interpretation may be incorrect, and that's fine, but I think he's just gonna drag me into depositions over and over again anyway. So, anyway, I really appreciate everybody keeping an eye on me and all your communications, and look forward to reading through comments and so forth. So thank you very much. It's been a long day, and I appreciate it. And like I said, I wanted to do this and get it over with, but I could tell he's going to drag me and drag this on for who knows how many months. It's just crazy. But anyway, appreciate it. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.